Hi, everyone. Thank you. Humans are underrated. I think that's where we can probably start. My name is Melissa Gordon. I am the general manager of Tradeshift's apps and our platform business. And I'm excited to be on a panel here today. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, Tiger, first, and Pavan afterwards. Tell us a little bit about what you do and where you're coming from.
I'm Tyagarajan. Tiger is a nickname. I actually don't play golf. I'm the CEO of Genpact. We provide digital transformation services for global 1,000 companies. And some of the conversations around 25,000 approvals to get a bill paid are the kind of things that we do. Obviously, we don't like dealing with 25,000 approvals for our clients. So we work with people like Tradeshift to automate and bring intelligence to a number of the processes that we do for our clients. And great to be here.
Thank you. And we actually announced our partnership today as well, which is perfectly timed.
Amazing timing.
Good morning. I'm Pavan Pamidimarri, and I work for Levi, Strauss & Company. We have some amazing brands. I look around the room and see some people in jeans here. I hope they're all Levi's. If not, I'm going to talk to you about it. I run global business services at Levi's. So that is our cross-functional shared services. So I basically say I'm responsible for paying all the bills, collecting all the money, making sure our books are in order, and getting our orders shipped, and keeping our systems up and running. So that's my job.
Very good. Thank you. So what we wanted to chat about today was the human side of automation. And we just heard Tice talk about all of the you talk about AI, you talk about machine learning, and what does that mean for people? What does that mean for automation? And very often, when you talk about digitization, the goal is not to rid business of humans. The goal is to up-level our game, really. How do we take what we're doing and make the automation that is calculating, is processing, done by machines, and how do we take our workforce and take them to the higher level? So I just wanted to start out first by us all just chatting a bit about what does automation mean and what does it mean for our industries and our workforce. So why don't you start, Tiger?
So Melissa, it's actually a very interesting topic to debate because let's start with the word automation itself. I think there's a problem if everything that we do, that Tradeshift does, for example, is put under the umbrella of automating, because by definition, when you automate, your mind goes to human labor being replaced. The way we think about that journey of digitally transforming a business is, firstly, it's changing the way the business runs. And you actually are going to try and change outcomes. So we really start with what's the problem you're trying to solve, what's the outcome you're trying to improve, and then let's work backwards from there. And when you do that, three things happen. One, you focus on outcomes rather than I have an objective to automate. Why is the objective to automate? Why not just eliminate it? Maybe it's not needed at all. Number two is start working backwards from outcomes that are much bigger than just cost. Mm-hmm. If you take a large enterprise and you say 100 people do something, let's take accounts payable, which I thought was a great example. And instead of having those 100 people do it, with lots of people manually approving things, you make that go away and only 10 people are needed. Well, that's probably okay. But if you have a $50 billion corporation, they really don't care about that 100 people becoming 10 people. What they really care about is my supplier being paid on time? Can you actually find a way to pay the supplier earlier that then allows me to go and renegotiate with the supplier a better discount? If that enterprise buys $20 billion of things from their suppliers, and if they get a 1% extra discount, then that's way, way bigger and better than trying to just think about, I want to make 100 jobs convert to 10 jobs. And the last thing I'll say is, when you find ways to bring digital technologies in, potentially you can think about expanding the pie of work. And one of the best examples that someone gave me was, we all have a car, we all drive a car, we all have insurance on the car. How many of you live in San Francisco or New York City and drive and use the car less than 50 days a year? I mean, I'll put my hand up. The insurance that I have is for the full year. I would prefer to have insurance from the minute I enter the car to the minute I leave the car and leave it in the parking lot. Very difficult to do that because the cost of doing insurance is very high. You now bring digital technologies in, it is possible to almost have zero cost to have that insurance in my hand from the time I leave the parking lot to the time I bring it back to the parking lot. I'm willing to pay 10 times more for that 2-hour insurance than what I would pay if I take the full year's insurance and convert that into 2 hours. And that's possible because of digital. So that changes the business model. So we think about automation not as automation, but change the business model and focus on outcomes.
You probably need a little bit of insurance in case someone runs into you in the garage, though.
That's right.
Just in case.
Someone comes and bangs the car up in the garage.
Exactly. Yeah. A little bit of insurance there, right? Pavan, could you talk as well? When Tiger was just mentioning an overall target, a cost reduction, a number. I know on your business you will manage to both a number, but an overall people and process and goals and outcomes. If you could start talking about that and how also that weaves into the human aspects of what you're trying to automate.
Absolutely. For us, automation in our industry, I mean, each industry has its own priorities for automation and how that actually makes an impact on the business. In our industry, there is two different lenses to look at it. One is basically how we make the jeans and all the automation that you can make in the process of creating our product. And that's not something that I am personally very close to. Like, I manage the back of the house, getting all the activities behind the scenes done. And there, the context of automation is really around how do we make things simpler for our business? How do we let the business become more agile, get things done in an easier and faster way, which is the outcome that we are after. Now, every year, to your point, Melissa, every year I get a target. There needs to be some productivity, efficiency, improvement in all of those. But if I were to go after it with simply a headcount reduction target or an FTE reduction as the process by which I try to figure that out, I'll never get to the answer. So what we try to do is, what are the improvements that we can make to the services that we deliver to the business? Where do we have the biggest bang for the buck in terms of delivering that improvement? And go after that. And one benefit when you do that well is you get more productivity, more efficiency, both within the back of the house operations that I oversee, but also for various business functions that we serve. And as a result of that, people are able to go and do their jobs better. I mean, one example I think of for automation is how we were dealing with tickets that come in from our end users when they have problems with our systems. Mm-hmm. So my email's not working. So I pick up the phone and call the help desk, and they create a ticket. Now, email's not working. That problem could be because the network's down where you are. It could be because something wrong with your computer. It could be any number of problems. And which group that ticket gets assigned to first makes a very big difference on how quickly your problem can be resolved. So if the ticket goes to the wrong group, it's going to hop, and it's going to take twice as long or 3 times as long to resolve the problem. And our goal is to basically get our people back to work as soon as possible, take away the problem they're facing. And we were doing assignment of tickets to the resolver groups manually. And we were able to, at best, get 80% accuracy in that initial assignment. And we were not trying to automate away the manual work. What we were trying to do is, how can we improve that initial accuracy? And we use machine learning to do some NLP and analysis on ticket information and figure out how to assign it properly. And by doing that, we were able to get more than 90% accuracy in our initial assignment. Now, going from 80 to 90 may not seem like much, but essentially the people who were spending extra time, people who were waiting longer, we were able to cut that in half, and that improved our customer satisfaction score significantly over the last year and a half. After we put this in place.
And that's really taking a big step forward. I think when I think about automation, I think about societal impacts. I think industry impact. I think about where we are today, where we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And I think that there are large-scale impacts on our society as a whole. You know, how we educate our children, how we educate our workforce, what we ultimately expect of people. I think that if you look back at the Henry Ford days of just shop floor automation and expectations of shop floor workers working machines and basic math, basic reading, like being able to operate machines versus what we expect today. I think that as we approach our work, as we approach education, educating our workers, educating our children, I just feel that both blue collar and white collar, change in what we expect of people is causing, we ultimately look at humans as change makers. The human is the actual part of the process that is the forcing function of enabling a true change. And I think it's very interesting as it relates to the work we all do day in and day out, and forces us to not just challenge a process, but how do you rework and rethink to the outcome you were just talking about. So I think in a tech company, we are forced as Tradeshift to constantly push the envelope, push how we think about it, because ultimately, innovate or die for that matter in technology. Both of you have very different perspectives. You, Tiger, work with a lot of different industries. And Pavan at Levi's, as kind of traditional physical goods production, you can actually touch what you make. It's a whole nother topic trying to explain to someone, we make software, there's actually just like nothing there. But that's a whole nother fun topic. But I would love to so I guess, Tiger, first of all, kind of more broadly, and then let's zoom in on the industry afterwards, but more broadly, can you talk about kind of how you've modernized the workforce, how you've also think about it both for yourself, but for your clients, and changing how they think about, hey, I'm not here to just cut 10 jobs. I'm here to actually drive change.
So I'll start, Melissa, by saying that irrespective of the industry you're in, and our industry is a great example of that, but I would argue every industry, if you don't change, then it's a question of time before you die. That half-life of a company is reducing dramatically because everyone is getting disrupted, and those who embrace that change are going to, be able to cross the bridge into the new world, and those who don't are going to die. So it's not just a digitally native company that needs to get digital savvy. I think every company in every industry has to. However, the argument we have is it's not just about being savvy about new technologies, about AI and machine learning and robotics and all these new technologies. It's also about, do you know how to use them to solve the problems that a particular industry or a particular domain faces? So in effect, you're talking about a world where we think bilingualism is going to win. So what does bilingual mean? Bilingual means, the millennial who's digitally native, who understands all these new technologies, who knows how to use them to solve various problems, combined with another group of people who actually understand the real problem in that industry, who understand how customers get satisfied, who understand customer experience and user experience in that industry, who understand how to win more business, and all of that, and who understand how to drive change. Because none of this is going to happen unless you can drive change. When you bring groups of people together to solve a problem that are composed of these two people who speak different languages, and then you put them in the room together to work as one team to solve the problem, with one caveat, each of them must be able to understand the other person's language. I am proficient in my language, but I kind of understand your language, which is why bilingualism becomes important. So all our training is geared on, can we make all the digital people understand industry and domain and problems in those industries, and what is the real opportunity you're trying to capture? And can we make all these other people who really understand their business really well to understand digital and technology, and then put those teams together to solve problems?
So just picking up on your point about physical products, I used to be a management consultant before. The best thing about moving to Levi's is I can tell my grandmother what I actually work at.
I can't.
That's good. I still can't.
But for us, basically, the human factor is a really important part of how to make it work. So I think back to the word robotics. So very unfortunate choice of name for a particular area of work, RPA, robotic process automation. We started talking about robotic process automation with my team a couple of years ago. And when you use that phrase, people think of R2D2 and C3PO, like metal robots running around, which is the exact opposite of what that is. So we had to spend a lot of time actually educating the team about what it is. Another thing that also is very, I am particularly keen to observe is when you have a solution that is looking for a problem. So when you have a hammer looking for a nail, how many of you have been in a conversation where somebody said, we need to figure out how to use blockchain?
Right.
We just need to hurry and
I've
figure
been
out
in
how to
lots
use
of
it.
them. So
when you figure it out, tell me.
exactly. So it's basically without having a particular problem, if we are looking for automation ideas, I'm very quick to kill them. Because I think what we need to have is an interest on the part of the people who are doing the actual work on changing that process. And that is where that bilingualism, as Tiger put it, comes in. What I try to do with my teams is the people who are experts at the work, people who have done it for many, many years, how do we introduce new concepts to them, get them trained, and get them to understand what is the art of the possible, whether that is with RPA or machine learning or whatever else. Now, my expectation is not that accountants are going to become experts at machine learning. But if the accountants do not understand the core concept of what is machine learning and how does it work, it will always be difficult for them to wrap their heads around, can I trust this model? This model worked, but it worked only because of these factors. The moment you depart from these, it will break, is how we will look at it. So it is very important to not treat a lot of these technologies, in my mind, as black box, but something that people look at a little more inside and understand how it is supposed to work.
Yeah, I think that when you talk about machine learning as a concept, getting the workforce to understand what it actually means. You know, it's and depending on like the fear of it versus the enablement of it.
Yeah.
So I live in Silicon Valley, and our local library has a 3D printer. So I am with my daughter who's in 4th grade, and we're sending stuff. We're trying to make my husband a gift. And we're sending stuff to the 3D printer, and it's keep making the same mistake. And she looks at me, she's like, well, Mommy, doesn't the machine learn? Like, isn't the machine gonna learn to fix the thing it's printing? Well, that's, I guess, her perspective that everything should learn. Why wouldn't the machine learn? On the other hand, in coming from, you know, not a child who's raised in expecting machines to be part of an extension of you, but when you go to work and you're looking at and getting an accountant to understand different machine learning models and how they're applied to work is a whole nother level. What do you, I guess, Pavan, when you talk about getting your accountants to understand, getting your accountants and other team members, they don't need to take like a computer science course by any means. But what do you do? Like, where do you start from square one to kind of up-level your team?
So one of the examples, one of the projects we're working on is improving our forecast accuracy by basically using, again, machine learning techniques with our historical financial data, as well as external data. And when we started the work, it was all basically data scientists and people who are familiar with programming who started the work. But very quickly we ran into this whole concept of, does it understand our wholesale business? Does it understand our retail business? All the questions about why it should not work. That's where all the questions went. So we did a few things. I mean, it was a combination. I don't think we've quite fully solved it yet. It's still work in progress. We got people educated in statistics. which is, I think, in my opinion, a little more important to get people more comfortable with machine learning concepts than even learning to program anything. So a lot of people had taken statistics at some point in high school or college, but a refresher was very helpful even for myself. And we also actually started talking about the very concept of what is a neural network, what is a model that is going to try to understand like so many different data elements you throw at it, and how does it form its own understanding of the world. And it's taken us probably 6 months over multiple sessions with the core people who are involved in this. We are not trying to do this with everyone in finance because that will take forever, but really key influencers and people who understand how our FP&A process works and have them go through this kind of training over multiple sessions has become a really important thing to do, because now I see them explain the model to their colleagues in FP&A, and that is the most powerful thing you can do, because no matter how much I explain it, they'll never accept it as easily as if their own functional colleagues do it.
It's the best in practice. Well, we talked about, Tiger, our internal communication Tradeshift Way app briefly when Tice put it up on the screen. Could you tell us your score and your internal system that you use to, I guess, train your workforce in this kind of bilingualism in communication with technology?
Yeah, no, it's actually
but you don't have to tell us your score. I don't know.
No, I will not. I won't get promoted. But it's very similar to what Pavan described. So we, about a year back, we came to the conclusion that we needed both groups of people, the FP&A forecaster, which, by the way, is one of the most interesting problems to solve, because half the problems in the world are because people forecast wrong. It's actually interesting, whether it's demand forecasting, supply forecasting, any forecasting. And machines can help a lot in that. However, it needs the understanding of the domain and the specific area you're forecasting, the wholesale retail example that Pavan you gave. So what we did was we said, look, we need to find a way to teach people. It can't be in a classroom. It has to be the new way. And that new way means 3 or 4 things. One, it has to be much more video. It has to be much more self-service. It has to be on mobile, on the cloud, on desktops, laptops, and so on. And it has to be in very small sound bites, 10-minute, 15-minute bites. So we pulled together an orchestration layer of a training platform. It doesn't take too long to do that these days with available technologies. And then we pumped in content into it, our own content, and available content from across an ecosystem, which is actually very easily available these days. So that particular finance professional in our kind of an organization that's serving a client, we expect that person to really understand what are the situations in which machine learning actually can be very useful. How do you find the opportunities to use machine learning? Because that's where they can be a true expert. Then you don't have the hammer searching for the nail. The nail basically says, I want this kind of a hammer. Right? So you're actually giving into the hands of the FP&A person through teaching use cases of here's how this problem was solved using machine learning. Here's how it did it, without getting into the detail of coding and neural networks and so on. Constantly testing knowledge and then giving scores. And then as you get better scores, you progress on to more difficult topics. So obviously, if I have a big score, then I can parade myself saying I have a score of 200. Oh, you have a score of only 100. I'm better than you. So we create competition across 90,000 people, global. And then most of that is on video. And then I was telling Melissa that since our teams are so distributed and global, all conversations and communication is virtual using video. And that's the nature of the world today. You can't bring people into a classroom and teach them. And then on the reverse side, we expect our machine learning, AI, and robotics people to understand how does an insurance policy work? How does a credit card fraud happen? How does supply chain in the consumer goods industry work? When Walmart places an order for a bunch of shampoo from P&G, how does that order get processed and then get supplied? And how does payment flow? And why does it sometimes not work properly? Once those people understand this and these people understand that, then you get that bilingualism and you progress the organization forward.
And that's also why you have a mix of teams. So you've been hearing from Ron while we've been talking, and he is an expert in supply chain. I mean, he's been living and breathing physical supply chains for years and moving them digital and working with our partners. What's important is the mix on the team. Having a mix of engineers, people with experience in industry, people with experience in different components, because when you start to digitize a supply chain, it's not going to all happen day one. You start looking at individual pieces. So I think it's definitely just a process, to say the least. And I think as we're kind of coming up on time here, I think personally, in working with Levi's, we've been doing a lot of work together with our companies. It pushes us to put and have a perspective of you. It's the only thing that's important when you're working with a partner and a client is your perspective of the outcome you're driving for, and how you can hopefully leverage our software and the means to accomplish that. And that's been a good journey for us. And then from a partnership perspective, as we look at kind of how our companies work together, how we weave our network together with both the software technology and people that you deliver, it's been it's an exciting time. So it's been good work across both. So thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us here.
Okay.
Thank you.